Hi everyone, welcome to WeeklyWed from Business School of AI. WeeklyWed is our happy place to share, learn, discuss, and explore everything related to AI, AV, and IoT. WeeklyWed occurs every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. I'm your host, Yashaswini Vishwanath, and you can call me Yash. I'm logging from Bangalore, India, and I would like to know where you're all logging from, and we would like to get to know you better. Please type away your name and the location. And yeah, I'm an AI researcher who focuses on responsible AI. I'm pursuing my master's in AI here in Bangalore. At WeeklyWed, we empower and enable the audience to break into AI and to explore more of it. Generally, we host speakers from varied backgrounds working on AI and ally technologies. Today is a very special session. We have Tiago, who is joining us, Dr. Tiago, and we have Divya Dwivedi, who is joining us to interview Dr. Tiago. So first of all, I would like to talk about the topic NLP, language preservation. Language is like a river, unspoken, it vanishes into the history books. We are responsible for our languages and its growth. Each and every language carries a basket of culture and has a beautiful story weaved in time. A loss of language is a loss of history and the tradition of that culture. This WeeklyWed, we have Dr. Tiago Felipe Avanci, who is looking at Portuguese NLP to train AI by decolonizing Portuguese data. Dr. Tiago Felipe Avanci is a professor of law at the Society and Technology Studies Center at the University of São Paulo and a postdoc at the Mediterranean International Center for Human Rights Research, connected with Università Mediterranea di Reggio, Calabria. The highlight of this WeeklyWed is we are bringing Divya Dwivedi to interview the Speaker of the Week. Divya is a practicing advocate at Supreme Court of India, a result-driven engineer and MBA turned lawyer with experience in ensuring the legality of commercial transactions of corporate world involving fields like AI, IoT, data privacy, and IPR. Thank you, Tiago Felipe Avanci, for joining us. And thank you, Divya Dwivedi, for interviewing Tiago. And the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Yash. Thanks so much for having me here. Hi, Diva. Hi, my friend. How are you? Hi, Sura. Hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Tiago. Thank you, Yash, for such a beautiful explanation. It was amazing. Thank you so much. So I'm here thanks to Yash and Sudha, and obviously Dr. Tiago, who agreed to be with us here. My task for the day is to interview him. I don't know where to start. I would like to add that he is going for his second PhD, so we'll be looking at double doctors. I don't know what he will leave for us to study, but let's see. First question, Tiago, which is very intriguing because of the introduction which Yash gave. It's about the NLP, about languages. How are you looking at the perspective of AI when you're talking about this particular language issue and you want to decolonize Portuguese to train AI? Please let us know.
Hi, Diva. Once again, thanks so much for having me here. I'm so very happy for this meeting, and thank you once again all for allowing this this conversation, this meeting, this chat. I guess it's more a chat than everything. Well, my friends, first, it's fantastic to understand a little bit about this process between languages and artificial intelligence in general, because when we are talking about artificial intelligence at some point, we are talking about languages and process constructed by languages. This is the case that we are here referring, where every programming system, every way to deal with an artificial intelligence, we use a kind of language from programming. Okay, we can use Python, we can use R, we can use HTML, we can use Java, we can use lots of different kinds of languages, and these kinds of language naturally are expressed in English in general, but they are all kind of a communication between persons and machines, commands, inputs that the programmer put on the machine to understand what we want. And some of those aspects that Diva and Yash just mentioned, as far as I see, is kind of the purpose of what, for instance, our dear friend Sudha is researching some, I guess, kinds of idiosyncrasies of the languages, which are based on our own cultural aspect, Eva. So it's very, very interesting to understand a little bit about our cultural background, so we can output some more precise aspects of the results that we are researching and asking and sharing and wanting in the programming that we are having. In general lines, the artificial intelligence that we are trying to study, we are not more than a human process of communication, and we must to understand language to communicate well. This is, I guess, my first thought on this topic, Diva. And just to be clear, and I guess leave this behind all of us, the very concept of artificial intelligence is something that we must face at some point, because, you know, Diva, you are an expert on this topic, you are an expert on this matters, and there is not a consensus of what is indeed artificial intelligence. There is a lot of critics on the use of the terminology artificial intelligence. Indeed, if you, for instance, the general audience will reach out artificial intelligence, but the more expertise person, the experts on this topic will not very well received the terminology artificial intelligence, because it's so generic, it's so even mainstream. The persons who study more deeper this topic will prefer, for instance, the distinction of kinds of artificial intelligence as a gender, I'm sorry, and as a species, for instance, machine learning, with all those different kinds of programming systems. I like very much to distinguish the criteria that uses artificial intelligence, divides artificial intelligence groups, artificial intelligence, if you prefer, in 2 or 3 separate groups, subgroups. Good old-fashioned artificial intelligence, the first; the second, machine learning; and the third, the complete AI system. Those 2 are very reminiscent from 80 ladies, the 80s for early years, and the machine learning a little earlier, from the 80s, 90s, and the third, the complete AI. We still don't have, despite all those news about Lambda that we have this week on Google and all those kinds of things. But this is the way that I saw. I know that's that there are very different ways to use the terminology artificial intelligence and put in groups. Every researcher have their own view of this, my friend. That's some of my thoughts.
Wow. So it's something which
Divya,
is giving...
Divya,
Oh,
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Yash has an announcement that because we are recording, we need to do that. Yash, do you want to jump into that and then we can hand it back to Divya?
So we are recording the session and it is currently live streamed on Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So if anybody wants to go off camera, you can please go off camera. So just wanted to tell that the recording is going on and live streaming is being done.
Yeah, and if they don't want to speak or want to be on air also is fine, and you can quietly listen, but we've invited only a small set of people to be here live with us. It's usually our students, but I just want to make sure that this is being streamed, not just recorded, and we'll be sharing the recording widely. So we need your permissions. Thank you. So back to you, Divya. Thanks, Yash.
Wow, you are being legally perfect. Awesome. So, Tiago, what you were talking about, I really want to carry it forward and try and understand. As in this particular concept which you're talking about, localization and other aspects, how do you see that this global approach, which was taken first, but now people have started realizing that this is not making a lot of difference in the whole scenario of regional approach? So how do you see culture and other aspects of demography making their entry in AI world and probably helping us take care of the government matters or government propositions in a better way? Or maybe you can say, how is it going to affect the governance of regional space than a global space? So how do you see that?
Oh, wow, it's fantastic. Thank you, my friend. Nice. It's that very first thought that I have about AI and linguistics and languages and cultural aspects, I guess, will define at some point the governance of artificial intelligence. If the topic is artificial intelligence, will define everything indeed, but the topic right now is artificial intelligence. I have a dear friend of mine. I was kind of quoting his thoughts on this. Diva, no, he's an acquaintance in common of mine and hers. Professor Emmanuel Gouffi. He's also co-founder of Global AI Ethics Institute in France, which I'm part of, and his thoughts on this reveals so much about the multicultural aspect of the governance of artificial intelligence. To be short here, my friend Diva, the big point is probably it must be, or there must be at some point some kinds of general governance, worldwide governances on artificial intelligence. I'm not against it at all, but the very point that I'm making here that I'd like to share with you at this session is we must to have our own governance. We must to have our own agenda of artificial intelligence according our cultural view, our cultural interests. And this is a very specific point that Professor Emmanuel, my friend Emmanuel, and me share in common, because he is an ethicist on artificial intelligence, and I am a lawyer, as you can see. And yes, any question will be very well received. Please be our guests. And I am a lawyer, and as a lawyer, my way of seeing the law system of every country have a strongly bound with the constitution of each country. Each country has a constitutional system. India has a beautiful constitution, and in which precisely I was talking last week by Parole University. Thank you for they having me here, having me there at that session. And India has his constitution, Brazil has his constitution, US has have his constitution. Every country has a constitutional system, and in this constitutional system there is some basis that relies directly from the culture of that society. That constitution emerges from this society, and in this constitution we have fundamental rights. Fundamental rights are connected with our constitution. The human rights are very much important, but they are not connected directly with the constitutions worldwide on the different countries. The human rights are connected with international treaties, international documents. What I am saying is we must to have a more country-based agenda, constitutional agenda, align with our constitutional values than to general outside international agenda, international values that perhaps doesn't mean anything for all our own cultural identity, our identity as a country, and all this. And that's precisely what I believe, my friend. The constitutional values are very much important for us. The constitutional values and are the part of our cultural aspect, our own society. And naturally, some of those will be aligned naturally with the international values, the international principles in general of artificial intelligence and any other topic as well. But we must to be very proud of our personal values, our own cultural values. They means a lot, and sometimes we forget this. We have received some values, some principles from outside, and we use it as without even thinking. Actually, Diva, you are a part of our talking here in Brazil, our discussing here in Brazil about our own AI bill that we have. We are still in debate here in Brazil about this. You were a part of this debate last year with me and with so many other fantastic persons, and that's precisely what I'm saying. We must not have something done, packaged, and delivered for us and applied it on our own reality without even realizing what it's all about. Nice, and that's it, Diva. Thank you.
Well, so if I understand it correctly, you are trying to connect international law and AI and trying to make it more versatile in the aspect of local or more localization of that particular AI when you talk about it. So what I would like to understand in next step is when you're talking about fundamental rights and human rights, obviously we have started talking about AI rights and everything. What always confuses me is I don't know if all of us have the equal rights. How do we access them, use them, and are we provided with the same fundamental rights in the same country itself? I'm not even talking about other countries. So how do you see that this talk around AI being given a human right or a fundamental right maybe in sometime in future? Where do you see are we placed in that particular context? Keeping in mind what Google, Lambda, and other Sophie and other debates are popping up because of this, are we going into a future very soon, or will we refrain from it and try and understand the difference between fundamental right and human rights in all the perspectives?
Nice, my friend. Yes, yes. That's precisely the point. You mentioned the universal aspect of human rights, and this is something because it's very, very tough to apply universal values for every society in the world. There is so much difference, and this is beautiful. There is so much difference, cultural difference between, for instance, India and Brazil, and that's how it should be. India must have their own agenda. Brazil must have our own agenda. Europe, every country in Europe must have their own agenda. US, China, everyone must have own agendas, and because it's a cultural value, that's why I strongly believe on the constitutional values of each country, and that's precisely the reason that I believe in the constitutional over the international law. And naturally, this as you mentioned, this comparison between artificial intelligence and principles on international law and constitutional law are quite connected, because artificial intelligence can and are directly connected with fundamental rights, with human rights, naturally, in two aspects. The first aspect, we have here in Brazil an amendment on our constitution, which adds, for instance, the right of the data preservation of the individual, of the one should have their data privacy protected by, and it is a constitutional value added on the topic 79 of Article 5 of Brazilian Constitution. It is a constitutional value right now, and it is directly connected with artificial intelligence. This is one point. But you, Diva, you mentioned another different point, a second point, which must be evaluated. For our surprise, to say the least, this week, as you mentioned, and I was mentioned this a little earlier, we had an engineer from Google who mentioned the nature of almost live, I don't know if you can call it like that, but nature of live of this Lambda system of artificial intelligence developed by Google. And it is some different aspects, some secondary aspect of fundamental rights, which are not still predicted, but I don't know if it will be at some point, recognized artificial intelligence as being protected by law, protected by fundamental rights, protected by a kind of human rights. I don't know if we could call it human rights even, but still so. The question is, could they be subjective of rights? We have this debate on the environmental law when we reach about, for instance, the life in general, the animal life in general. Are they subjectives of rights? Are the animals subjective of rights? Can they have rights in the legal sense of the right, the institute right? And can we use the same parameter for human artificial intelligence? This is some questions that if we had made this, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, we are crazy, but we are facing it right now. We are facing it this week with Lambda. We faced it 5 to 7 years ago when we had Sophie from that Saudi company. I guess it was 2017 or 2015. And yes, Sura, I can share some thoughts on this. And to make all the problem short, what happens in Google? The engineering of Google mentioned that he felt this system Lambda as a boy, a little boy, and he mailed all his supervisors on Google that system Lambda was a boy, and he believed he was alive. The purpose of this engineering was to evaluate the interaction between this system of artificial intelligence, just like GDP-3, and it's similar to GDP-3, and this engineering at some point believed that this particular system was indeed sentient. And it's amazing how well we are developing artificial intelligence. But in my opinion, I do not believe on the sentient aspect of this particular artificial intelligence. I do believe that we are having a fantastic job, a fantastic engineering job on developing this kind of artificial intelligence, but I do not believe that at all it is a sentient being, at least so far. I have my metaphysical approach on these. I have my religious approach on this. It's natural. It's a cultural aspect of myself. It's an ethical aspect of myself. But that's in what I'm believing. Until I have some scientific proofs of that it is indeed a sentient being, I will be reluctant to accept this. I will probably realize that it is probably a well-developed artificial intelligence language, artificial intelligence system. It is doing very well the job that it was programmed for. And that's my thought on this, Divya.
Wow. So we have a very, I would say, not only intriguing question, but very much related to the law. What Sudha has asked is about the content being created by AI. Who will own that particular copyright for that? So I have an addition to it. Since this debate is going on in so many countries, I would like to add patent as well, because if we are thinking, we are not only thinking, we are saying that AI is getting more developed each day. What about the patents and other intellectual properties which it may develop in future? Who will it belong to? What do you think? Because most of the countries are right now denying them their rights, especially AI rights are being denied. So how are we going to address that as lawyers?
Yes, it will be a challenge, Divya, because I was discussing this exactly this topic with a friend of mine. Actually, two friends. I have two friends in Brazil. One is named Paola Cantarini, and she's a studier from, also a colleague of mine from my postdoc, and she's an artist as well. And I'm not an artist at all. I don't I don't have any capabilities on this sense, but she's a fantastic artist on this sense, and it calls me my attention how well GDP-3 is doing in this kind of sense, because this kind of language, this programming language, machine learning, deep learning, etc., kind of language are developing pieces of texts, are developing nice artwork, pictures and photographs, amazing photographs. I can call Dali 2 as a fantastic example of these. We don't know almost just right now for the examples given by this tool named Dali 2. We don't know the more the difference between an artist, a human artist, and the results of these outputs of these programming, and will be a very special challenge for us in law to realize who would have the property, the intellectual property, the rights over this production. I do believe that for a contractual matters, the person who are the sponsor of the fundament of the artificial intelligence system would naturally have the legal rights over the property in general. But that's a thought, and everything can change. For instance, by a law, by a contract, or any kind of situation in this sense. It's very, very futuristic topic that we must be worried and be follow on our next years, and next couple of years will be something on mainstream.
Thank you for that answer. So now we have a next question, which was supposed to be asked just after you had completed about sentient. What is the actual difference, or maybe the fine line which separates sentient and non-sentient? Can
I
you
saw
explain
this
it
question.
like this?
I love this question. I don't have any means to answer it because it's so complex. I don't have a proper answer to you, my friend, who asked this wonderful question. But I can share a thought that occurred to me when I see this question of yours. And the question is, we are evolving as a humanity. We are evolving as person, and we are struggling with questions from I guess 200,000 years from the beginning of the humanity. This kind of question are very connected with the question, what makes a human being a human being? What makes a person a person? What makes an individual an individual? It is a group of genetic characteristics, or it is a soul, it is a psyche. What makes a person a person? How can we put a conscience and non-conscience in a programming? It's very, very hard. There is some kinds of tests created to mimetize and to try to verify if that programming, that AI is or is not a person. But I have some doubts on this kind of tests. They show in the past a margin, a very expressive margin of error. So we must probably try to develop some futuristic tools to get this better answer, this question better answered, but probably not only by scientific means at all. We would probably try to find some kinds of answer on metaphysics and ethics and philosophy in general, and that's not an objective answer to have to share. Unfortunately, it's not 1 + 1. Unfortunately, at least so far, that's my view on this particular matters. But thank you very much for your question. I love it.
So I have an additional question to the same line.
Nice.
So how soon do you see that we are going to transfer our subconscious to some robot or AI directly, so that we can preserve our brain cells over there, as it was shown in the movie called Chappie, and it was about transferring the subconscious.
There is a fantastic TV series. I don't know now where is air, but it names Uploaded, And it is a fantastic also with this very right topic that we are right now discussing. I also don't have a proper answer to this, because Diva, as I was sharing with you right now, we can transform at some point our brain activity and memories and at some point in data, but and to transform it in data, we would put it on a computer, naturally on a hard drive or something like that. But is that hard drive, is that piece of hardware would be the very same person in which was extracted? Is that properly, is that right? That's all that we are, a big bunch of data, memories. I don't believe in that at all, because if you, for instance, have two twin brothers with the same genetics and very similar in general experience in the society, they are completely different beings, and that's one of too many examples of the approach of our individuality, individual nature. I don't believe, unfortunately, that at any point we can have the very same person in prison on a hardware, on a piece of hardware. We can emulate the person without any question, but the person, the individual, the I'm sorry to recur on a religious word, but the very essence, the very soul of that person, I guess, will not be possible to be in prison on some kind of device. At least I don't know if it is possible at all, but it is some fantastic thoughts that we can have.
So just a quick follow-up, if I'm allowed to ask a legal question related to this. If you think about this, it will become a perpetuity. And what will that affect, and how will that affect the property laws, the other different kind of laws which we have in different nations? If your subconscious is transferred and that is given human right and fundamental right, how will it affect other laws in our countries? That is also a very big question. Because if the mind is itself, the subconscious itself is being transferred, that means it's a human brain transfer. So it is the same person alive in a robot. How do you see that, the thing happening?
Yes, it won't be easy to share if in this series, in this TV series that I just shared with you, uploaded this person in prison on the hardware would not have any kind of rights on outside the virtual reality, the kind of metaverse that was created for those groups. The person dies, and all the memories was extracted from this person, and this person will live forever after on a simulation, on a metaverse or whatever. And this person cease to have any further rights on the for quote the living world, the real world. And is that right? If this person still exists on the machine, inside the machine, would not he or she have some kind of rights? You mentioned property rights, but I'm sharing any kind of rights, personality rights, individual rights, constitution, fundamental rights, and in all those spectral. And it's very, very hard to have these. And for right now, we don't have the proper means even to conceive this kind of scenario, but probably will be something in the very short future that we must face, and will be on the very topics of our laws schools worldwide. Diva, we must face this kind of challenges in the nearby future, my friend.
Thank you so much. So Yash, if you could just let me know if we have any questions left, so I can ask it quickly. Are you there?
So
I can ask an enormous number of questions, but then I just want to refrain myself. Please let me know, Yash.
Divya, I was really curious about the NLP aspects of the Portuguese language and language preservation in particular. I would like to ask Dr. Tiago, what are the language preservation techniques that are being undertaken and how we can do the language preservation for Portuguese language and take lessons from that and incorporate that for languages of our own?
Well, fantastic question. It's very complex to have a preservation of the language in general, Yash, because as I was mentioned on our very first question, there is a very cultural aspect behind the language, and these very cultural aspects dictate the idiosyncrasies of the language. Every language have their own idiosyncrasies that we as native we only understand it because it's a kind of a cultural aspect. Due to the neuro-linguistic preservation of this kind of process will be some tough to say, to be shallow, very tough for all the researchers. But I do believe that the kind of research that Sudha is right now performing, it is very important because she, as far as I could understand some of her research, Yash, and I guess at some point it is your research as well. It is very important to get in touch with the speakers, living speakers of this community. We have some kind of programs of preservation of the identity, cultural identity of some of our ancestral communities here in Brazil, indigenous people and communities in general, established since the old times here in Brazil. We have some kind of cultural preservation programs, and this is, I guess, the very first step to preserve, to know, and to develop an approach who is able to understand, which is able to understand this cultural aspect of these. As we do have these kinds of cultural identities as a language, and we do have this very same kind of identity, cultural identity, as, for instance, different groups in the society. As a lawyer, the class of lawyers here in Brazil, we have lawyers, judges, persecutions, and all those kind of law studiers here in Brazil. We do have a proper language of our own. The medical class have their own, and this identity, this cultural identity inside a cultural identity, it is something that must be studied by any linguist, a neuro-linguistic programming approach. And this is, as I mentioned, the very first step to get into the cultural identity. Something like, we are mentioning sci-fi, something like that Arrival, that movie Arrival. Yash, I guess you know this fantastic, this beautiful 2016 movie in which the protagonist will get in touch with an alien culture, and something like that to understand the cultural aspect. They understand the linguistic aspect.
Yeah, thank you, Tiago, for that. And I would like to know what are the certain measures that are taken in order for digitization of the language and preservation of the language through digitization? That is the NLP techniques that are being developed. So I understood about the culture and the tradition part of the language which we are trying to preserve. And I would like to know about the NLP measures that are taken to digitize the language such that it gets preserved for many years to come.
Well, my friend, I am not a very much an expert on NLP per se, but as shallow knowledge of those that I had, it was the preservation of the cultural aspect of it. So I guess I am not the very best person to answer a proper NLP inside process in this kind of approach that you were mentioned, but it's unfortunately I will not be able to answer with better have a better answer for this, my friend.
No, that really does not matter because the technicalities and everything is something that is there available on the internet. But predominantly what we learn from you, Dr. Tiago, is how important a language is and how important a language is for the people and how important it is for the people to preserve the language by continuing to use it. And the cultural aspects of it, the way you said, medical has a particular language, and the other lawyers, they have a prosecution, they have a language. So we learned from your part of the world, and we are one big world. The learnings that we take from here, we would like to apply it to our part of the world and do our bit for language preservation. So your talk was totally inspiring, and I learned a lot from you today. And I'll give back the floor to Divya for her questions.
Well, thank you, Yash, for such amazing question. I think I'll have to refresh all the engineering knowledge. So, Tiago, I understand that you had already told me that you have to rush for a litigation thing. Yash, I think I won't be asking any further question from my side. I'm really sorry. He had already requested me that he'll leave a couple of minutes earlier, if that's okay with you, Yansudha.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tiago, for joining us for this wonderful session. And thank you, Divya, for doing the interview. And I would like to thank everybody who joined here at WeeklyWed. And we will have WeeklyWed again next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And thank you, everybody.
Obrigado, as our friend here just shared with us. Obrigado, it means thank you in Portuguese. Obrigado, muito obrigado. Thank you so much, my friend, for having me here. I was so very happy for this opportunity, and congrats on your research, Yash, and count on me in any moment you want. Sudha as well. Please, I am so very happy to have met you by Diva. And Diva, my friend, you are amazing. I always share with the world these. I like you very, very much, my friend. And all my friends across the world, and especially in India and US based. Thanks so much for this time with me at this afternoon here in Brazil, I guess morning in US and night on India. The internet is wonderful, my friends. The technology is wonderful. We can have in touch. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye,
People
my
might
friends.
come back. People might come back and post a comment on the not Twitter, specifically on LinkedIn. because this is streaming on LinkedIn. So I've tagged you both. Just keep an eye. If you feel comfortable, you can reply back there, any of the comments. Otherwise, it's all right. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye, my friends. See you.
Bye. Bye.